Chers et chers collègues, we are about to start again. On va reprendre les débats. Donc, il est prévu que l'on finisse à midi et demi, il me semble. On a encore 1h30 de discussion avant la session de clôture. On aura la traduction simultanée en fait jusqu'à à peu près encore 1h15, 1h30. Donc, j'en profite pour les collègues francophones de prendre la parole à ces moments-là et d'avoir des interventions. Je suis sûr qu'elles seront pertinentes. Je continue? Okay. So, during this first hour, we had a lot of talk related to remittances, a little of semantics, as we had also yesterday. But this session should be more focusing on strategy we should develop within IFAD member state and UNCC focal point that are representing their country here on how to better create this synergy between the diaspora investor, the remittances family, and the national priority that are designed in their country. It could be agricultural priority, environmental priority, NDCs, LD and target setting, even the upcoming new National Biodiversity Action Strategy based on the Global Biodiversity Framework that has been agreed last year. So I would like you, all of you, or the country representative to get your views, not only on this component one, that was, we spent too much time for me on this one, but more on component 2 and 3. I would to leverage, remittances and diaspora investment for sustainable land use and climate resilience, both adaptation and attenuation. So maybe Louise, Catherine, you want to add something, no, related to that? So yeah, so I'll leave you the floor, colleagues. Please, open discussion.
Can you come again? I'm not sure we got you. Can you repeat what you said?
Yeah,
Thank
okay,
you.
I will. In your country, you have strategy, development strategy, agricultural strategy, land degradation naturality strategy. You have NDCs related to climate action in your country. And we want to have your views, on how the approach we presented yesterday and also this morning could be integrated in this strategy. Do you have, like in your country, any approach already existing that are incorporating diaspora investor in this strategy? Yes or no? And if yes, how we can better leverage, this fund in this strategy? And if not, what can we do? To help you to work on that. This morning, like just a little earlier, we have this issue of identify solid investment opportunity. How do we do that, in your country? What are your proposals, to provide this solid investment opportunity to the diaspora investor? What's happening in your country, that could fit, with this approach?
Thank you. I'll just give a bit of experience from Zambia. We have the National Diaspora Policy, and the government has seen as a priority to include the people in the diaspora in national development. So what the government wants to do is to ensure that as they are out there in the diaspora, their investments are secured. So there is a process now of establishing the National Diaspora Fund. When we look at the policy, it has called for its establishment. So now they are just looking at the modalities, or now it's going to function, how the funds are going to flow into that, and how the funds are going to be used. Then also, the policy also looks at other areas of interest which are going to ensure that the people who are remitting their remittances to the country can get the benefits out of their remittances and so on. So in the nutshell, we have a policy, and also if you look at the financial inclusion strategy of 20 something up to 2022, I think it ended last year, it has to be reviewed. It also talks about how remittances can be leveraged to help in national development.
And
There's more.
Yeah.
I really just wanted to ask, and indeed, and I'm familiar with that one, and a lot of the national policies, when we get to this, is a lot of questions. We should, we aim at, but there's no follow through, or at least there's no tools that would allow to answer those questions. We see a lot is we have to see how remittances can be further leveraged for development and reduce the cost, and we can find also other key priorities like in the Global Compact for Migration in regard. But then what is missing is the tooling, and how do we do that? That unfortunately stays a little bit in suspension, and I think this is also the objective of this initiative. But I just wanted to highlight that. So one of the questions we were talking with the colleagues is, the more we can extract from you, that is the policies that exist, the priorities that exist, what might be their shortcomings, or where could they be supported? What is the next tape? Is this a good, if I can call it, a toolkit to address that, to create those bridges between your priorities on financial inclusion, and for instance, and diaspora engagement, commitments almost that you have? Could this be a good toolkit that will bridge the savoir-faire that has been gathered by institutions, in this case like IFAD, to implement? Would this be a value proposition for donors to say, well, we would like to invest also in this and support you in that? This is, I think, what we would be very helpful to get from you, where you see maybe any shortcomings in order to support the implementation of this.
Well, if I may, because I see that my colleagues have downloaded the diaspora strategy of your country. Huh? So there is a good, there are good strategies in place. So to refine the question is to where are the needs for your specific countries? Not only on do you have strategies, but where do you identify the need?
Sorry, just to respond to that. If you look at the policy measure which is talking about promoting and facilitating the leveraging of remittances, it talks about facilitating lowering the cost of sending remittances by the diaspora with a view to maximize the benefits of remittances in the country. So here now, you're looking at now the tools or the platform that are going to be used for this. You find that they are not fully developed, and for it to become a reality, there is need to see that what is provided for in the policy becomes a reality. Then also there's another measure which talks about providing incentives to the diaspora for the import of personal belongings and capital goods for returnees. So there's need again to see that policy measures are consistent. You find that the Revenue Authority may look at, may introduce certain taxes again, which are going to work against this policy measure. So there's need for policy measures to be consistent and work in harmony, so that what is the desired becomes the reality.
Just from Oh, sorry, please. You want to go next, or?
Yeah, thank you very much. In Ghana, there's a national policy on the diaspora. Some few years ago, there was an engagement. They've done a mapping. In fact, they would like to know the location of these colleagues who are living outside. And there was a homecoming enterprise that was organized, which attracted a good number of them into the country. But the focus has been on tourism. Yes, so that they will see how best they can invest towards the tourism sector and make enough money for the country. And that's what I know about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ce que j'allais dire, bonjour à tous, je ne sais pas, peut-être dire bonjour ce matin. J'allais dire que la problématique pour moi se trouve à plusieurs niveaux et qu'on ne peut pas tout de suite dire qu'on a une solution puisque la composante 1 devrait nous aider également à avoir des informations complémentaires. Mais comme le disait mon collègue de la Zambie, il y a réellement au niveau du ministère des Affaires étrangères une direction de la diaspora. Mais il faut reconnaître que déjà au niveau du Bénin, on a plusieurs pôles de diaspora. Il y a la diaspora par pays. Il y a également la diaspora parfois au niveau coopératif. Quand je prends l'Union européenne, il y a un responsable diaspora des Béninois vivant au niveau européen, des Béninois vivant en Amérique. Et on a le volet également des Béninois vivant dans d'autres pays d'Afrique qui sont de vrais pôles de financement pour nous. Quand je prends pour le Bénin, vous avez beaucoup de Béninois dans les pays comme le Congo, le Gabon, qui sont de grosses sources de financement pour un pays comme le Bénin parce que vous avez beaucoup de partenariats et d'échanges monétaires. Donc, nous avons tous ces pôles-là d'abord. Et puis après, vous avez les envies des gens d'investir au Bénin, même dans l'agriculture, mais qui ne rencontrent pas de réussite. Parce que la personne s'investit et puis elle n'a pas forcément une certaine réussite, un rendement, ce qui fait que finalement, elle achète de la terre au niveau national. Le problème du foncier va se poser à nouveau et puis elle abandonne. Elle laisse la terre en jachère ou elle attend de ce qu'elle prenne de la valeur au niveau truc là et la revendre. Donc, l'idée, c'est de vraiment trouver les éléments de comment devenir accrocheur dans ce sens-là pour que ces terres ou des gens qui ont envie d'investir réellement puissent avoir les outils. Et d'où l'intérêt de la composante 2 et de la composante 3. Parce qu'on peut créer de l'employabilité sur la base d'une agriculture florissante qui tient compte des problèmes de dégradation de terre. Moi, je dirais d'abord qu'aujourd'hui, nous, à l'intérieur même du Bénin, on a des migrations internes liées à la question de dégradation des terres. Vous avez une zone comme le centre du Bénin, le Zou, le Koufo, où les gens migrent dans les collines qui ont beaucoup plus de terres fertiles aujourd'hui. Et ceux des collines appellent ceux-là des migrants alimentaires. Ils les appellent comme des migrants alimentaires. Et vous avez même jusqu'à des mariages qui se font juste parce que l'individu va chercher une femme dans cette région-là pour pouvoir y aller et avoir accès à la terre. Et on s'est retrouvé, une anecdote, dans une problématique où on était sur le terrain dans le cadre de, il y a 2 ans, la journée mondiale de lutte contre la désertification, et la femme qui était abandonnée dans le zoo et qui a utilisé avec l'appui de la GIZ des pratiques de restauration de terre disait « Ma crainte aujourd'hui, c'est que mon mari revienne parce que ma terre revit. » Je n'ai plus envie qu'il revienne. Il est parti avec celle des collines. Donc moi, j'ai plus envie qu'il revienne parce que moi, j'ai travaillé sur la terre inactive qu'il m'a donnée. Et voilà. Donc c'est véritablement de vraies problématiques que nous avons. Et je crois que c'est le cadre de réflexion pour que nous arrivions à quelque chose de tenace. C'est vrai qu'en venant moi-même, je n'avais pas vraiment vu le lien qu'on pouvait faire, mais aujourd'hui, je me dis, oui, mais s'il y a de l'argent à prendre quelque part pour réinjecter ailleurs, il faut vraiment qu'on l'appelle. Et je crois que nos États seront également demandeurs de motiver des Béninois de l'extérieur, de motiver des expats, des Béninois qui vivent à l'extérieur à venir réinvestir chez eux. Et nous sommes vraiment dans cette dynamique-là. Mais la deuxième chose dont je voulais parler, c'est des appuis innovants. Parce que parfois l'agriculture devient un problème parce que c'est pénible pour les jeunes. Donc la pénibilité de l'agriculture doit entrer dans les innovations qui doivent être apportées parce que cela permettra de réduire également ces mouvements du rural vers la ville parce que si on demeure dans les pratiques telles qu'elles étaient il y a 10-15 ans dans nos régions, même si le jeune n'est pas sûr de ce qu'il ira faire en ville, il aura envie de partir parce qu'il trouve que c'est pénible et qu'il y a de plus en plus moins de main-d'œuvre également. Parce qu'au Bénin, dans le nord du Bénin, nous sommes producteurs de coton. Les gens venaient d'autres pays voisins. Et aujourd'hui, ils ont moins d'arrivées de gens dans ces régions-là. Ce qui fait qu'un agriculteur peut dire j'abandonne parce que j'ai besoin de 15-20 ouvriers. Je n'en ai que 2 et cela ne me permet plus d'atteindre le quota que j'ai envie d'atteindre pour tenir dans ma famille. Donc, je revends ma terre, je revends mon bétail et je me déplace en ville. Et c'est quand il arrive en ville qu'il se rend compte que vraiment qu'il a fauté. Donc, l'innovation doit aller également vers l'appui technologique pour permettre à ces gens-là d'avoir des outils de travail qui leur permettent vraiment de continuer dans l'activité dans laquelle ils sont. Je crois qu'il y en a, quand ils réussissent, ils sont vraiment fiers d'avoir produit, d'avoir vendu et d'avoir ce capital-là. Je me rappelle, il y a 15 ans en arrière, je suis resté à l'IT, à l'Institut international d'agriculture tropicale, et sur une activité de bioécologie, on était sur le terrain et l'agriculteur nous disait, mais moi, je peux vous payer, vous. Et réellement, il était en mesure de nous payer parce qu'il avait ses enfants avec lui, il avait beaucoup d'espace, il produisait énormément, il avait des sous, il creusait, il foutait ses sous sous terre, il en avait. Et aujourd'hui, on a beaucoup d'agriculteurs qui, par défaut de main-d'œuvre, par défaut d'appui, se sont appauvris plutôt, et donc ils voient leur famille se dissémer et les enfants partir également. Voilà un peu ce que je voulais apporter au débat. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. I'm not sure I can follow that by being quite that funny. I like it. I'm going to kick off, though, with the tenure and gender components. And that for me, is one of the enabling factors that I think, when we get resilience building, non-financial, whatever, that at least in our experience, has been something that has enabled people to invest in land-based activities, is if they've got secure tenure. It means that people will choose to stay as long as they can because they will want to fight for something that they own. It also means that if they are looking as an investment, it makes it more secure that you've actually got the property that you're investing in. So I think the tenure element would be really important, especially for women, so the husband doesn't come back. So that's an important issue. Another thing came up yesterday that I thought was quite interesting was you were talking about the de-risking quite a lot yesterday. And one of the experiences we've had in the sustainable land management field and investing in private sector is through an impact investment fund called the LDN Fund. And it has an element of quite, in the first instance, first loss capital, quite high amounts of junior shares in this impact investment fund because they were making a case. They were making a case that investing in degraded land could be a good business proposition. So I'd be quite interested in whether this is something that we should look at, either talking to them about whether we could pilot something, or thinking about how we bring in some form of first loss capital for diaspora investors into a project. So to build up that confidence that an investment in this sector is going to work. The other point you mentioned about needs, and I think this is also a really interesting point. We're going through the exercise at the moment of doing, I won't bore you with acronyms, but a revised target setting process. And part of that exercise is ensuring policy alignment with climate change and biodiversity, so that the kind of targets that are set have got relevance for all three conventions. The interesting part about it is they have two physical characteristics. One will be a land use plan, a spatial plan that meets the requirements both for UNCCD and also for CBD, which identifies areas that are degraded and that could be restored or should be protected. And it'll also involve, some sort of mapping exercise and putting that on a map. We've got a kind of beta of that, which is called trends.earth, but over time, this will get more specific, where the kind of the needs in terms of degraded land that's going to be preserved, it will become more obvious. It's a kind of, work in progress at this stage, but it potentially identifies areas worked on with countries where the kind of investment opportunities should become more obvious. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking at component 2 and 3, I think I need some more clarity. Maybe I'm not familiar with the new terminologies, because I've seen that the two components are focusing on climate resilience and sustainable land use. My concern is on the sustainable land use. If you look at the 3S initiative, it's basically dwelt on sustainable land management. And when we're looking at sustainable land use, maybe my own understanding is that it is to the use which land is put to. And here maybe we're talking about how conservatively we use the land. Now, when we talk about sustainable land management, we're looking at how we manage it, how we restore it so that it maintains its productivity and so on. And when we come to the 3S initiative, are we looking at land resources, how well we manage them so that they become productive, then the community stay there, they produce, they generate wealth, they live happily there. So the problem which is there now is when this resource is not well managed, the land resources are degraded. The result is that people now are going to migrate. Then those who can't migrate, again, they'll compete for the little remaining portions of fertile land. This is potential for conflict. Then those who are migrating also, where they are going, they'll introduce certain practices which may not be in tandem with the communities they'll find there. That is potential for conflict again. Then you find that if there is limited resource there, you look at the land administrative patterns there, you may find that, for example, the land administration is in the traditional leadership. You give them money, they give you the productive land, you displace the local people you find there. There's internal displacement. So at the end of the day, some people may not migrate internally, they emigrate. So what we want to do now is to ensure that the land continues to remain productive. So now if we concentrate on sustainable land use, how are we going to bring back the productivity of the land? And how are we going to ensure the resilience of the land? So I needed maybe more clarity on what we are referring to here. Is it sustainable land use or is it sustainable land management? Thank you.
Yeah, maybe it's also a question of semantics. Maybe you, Steve, you will present. We'll have two interventions after. Maybe we can have like a recap of component 2 and 3. You're right. It's sustainable land use. But this is like some semantics. In UNC, and even in CBD now, you are using ILOOP, integrated land use planning, and sustainable land management as a whole. In the approach. So I guess this is something we can change. I will say the same than Pedro. This is a PowerPoint presentation. There is not everything in that, and we can easily change it. But I totally agree with your concern on that. Please, our colleague from Mali.
Ok. Bonjour tout le monde. Vous avez Mamadou Goumané du ministère de l'Environnement, de l'Assainissement et du Développement durable. J'ai pris le terrain en marche dans le processus. Je voudrais profiter de l'occasion faire quelques commentaires. Pour ce qui concerne l'intérêt du Mali, je dirais que le processus intéresse véritablement le Mali pour des raisons comme quoi, au niveau du pays, nous avons déjà une politique de migration avec un plan d'action qui est en cours de révision, et cette plan d'action s'étend du période 2020-2024. Donc, c'est l'occasion pour moi personnellement d'apprendre des discussions pour voir quel peut être l'apport de ma modeste contribution dans la finalisation de cette politique, son plan d'action bien sûr. Et au-delà de ça, au niveau du pays, le Mali a une politique nationale sécheresse 2021 avec un plan d'action 2021-2025. Et en termes de migration, tout récemment, en 2019, le Mali a opérationnalisé le Centre d'information et de gestion des migrations, qui est un centre d'aide à la décision au niveau du pays pour donner des informations nécessaires afin de renforcer les capacités des acteurs intervenants dans la migration, la promotion des investissements productifs de la diaspora malienne et analyse de l'incidence des investissements sur la migration, mais aussi de contribuer à l'élaboration et à la révision des politiques et stratégies et programmes au niveau du pays. Donc, pour dire que le débat, ça intéresse véritablement le Mali pour ce qui concerne le renforcement de la résilience des communautés. Et pour ma part, au niveau du ministère de l'Environnement, nous avons des besoins. Actuellement, en termes de contributions déterminées au niveau national, nous sommes en train de mener des réflexions pour élaborer le plan d'investissement du secteur privé. Et là, qui part du secteur privé, part aussi de l'intérêt que la diaspora peut faire en termes d'intervention au niveau du pays. Et nous avons aussi constaté en termes de partenariat public-privé qu'il y a beaucoup d'efforts à faire. Je dirais que dans l'organisation des différentes composantes, si nous pouvons prévoir des interventions dans ce sens pour développer le partenariat secteur public-privé. Et au-delà de ça, l'initiative 3S s'aligne un peu aux objectifs du Forum de Bamako qui s'est tenu courant le mois de novembre 2023. Pour rappel, face à la crise multidimensionnelle que connaissent le pays, et les autorités ont tenu un forum international pour voir dans quelle mesure nous pouvons avoir des actions coordonnées, intégrées pour s'attaquer aux causes réelles de l'insécurité du pays. Donc, le Nexus climat, sécurité a donné des recommandations. Et parmi ces recommandations, il y a aussi comment promouvoir des activités génératives de revenus au niveau des zones sensibles. Parce que dans le Sahel, particulièrement, on sait que le changement climatique exacerbe davantage les conflits communautaires. Et aussi, il serait bon déjà qu'il y ait des sources alternatives de revenus pour la communauté. Aussi, en termes de dégradation avancée des terres, et parmi les préoccupations du Mali, nous souhaiterons avoir des activités et des restaurations des terres à travers les nouvelles technologies, mais aussi des gestions intégrées. Donc, pour ce qui concerne le programme, il y a aussi une question de compréhension. J'ai compris que dans l'intervention, nous sommes en train de discuter sur la formulation des nouveaux programmes. Et si tel est le cas, je me dis aussi en termes de consultation, pour des questions d'appropriation, il serait souhaitable de voir dans le chronogramme de formulation du programme des sessions de consultation au niveau des pays et éventuellement pour véritablement associer les autres acteurs, parce qu'au-delà du ministère de l'Environnement, il y a aussi d'autres bénéficiaires du pays qui peuvent être mobilisés et qui peuvent faire des contributions pertinentes en termes d'identification des activités. Sur ce, je vous remercie.
Hello? Yeah, okay. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Ambassador Dano, the Ambassador of the Republic of South Sudan and the permanent representative to IFAD and World Food Programs and FAO. As a younger nation, as some of you will know, we got our independence in 2012, 2011. We are almost 12 years. And when I was attending these things, this very good conversation yesterday, I have interest because myself also being a refugee outside for many years, and we have a big number of diaspora in the Western world particularly. So was really thinking, and this is my question to all of you and particularly to IFAD, as a younger nation, how can you help us with these diaspora people? Because from my experience, South Sudanese diaspora, they have not reached yet to the level of investment. They are trying to see that they help their family so that they get something on the table. This is the focus now. And the diaspora office, it is under in South Sudan, is not under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but it is in the office of His Excellency the President. And would also appeal to you that there is a need to do some training and capacity building in this institution. And even for diaspora, wherever they are, I think they need training and also capacity building. How can they cope and what can they learn from Africans, from others, diaspora in other part of the world? So now my question to you, what can you do? I understand when I met the president of IFAD last year, when I presented my credential, there was no IFAD office there, but now there is an IFAD office. If you need us and as an embassy here to connect you with the office of His Excellency President, especially the desk, the diaspora desk, and we are available to do that. And we have a small number of diaspora, South Sudanese here in Italy, between 300 to 500 people. So also we need all of us to put our head together. What can we do for them? And so I appreciated this brilliant conversation, and I'm here to learn from you. I humbly submit. Thank you very much.
Collègue du Burkina Faso,
Merci bien. Je voudrais immédiatement dire que la diaspora burkinabé est un potentiel d'investisseurs inexploités. Et pour cela, le ministère en charge des Burkinabés de l'étranger a commandité une étude en vue d'élaborer un cadre stratégique de la promotion et de la mobilisation des investisseurs de la diaspora du Burkina, avec pour objectif donc d'optimiser les investissements de cette diaspora et de les encourager à investir dans leur pays d'origine. Et aujourd'hui, les secteurs des mines, de l'agro-silvopastoral et des services sont des opportunités d'investissement importantes qui ont été identifiées dans notre stratégie. Donc aujourd'hui, le pays est dans une très grande dynamique de s'organiser et avec la conviction qu'au génie créateur libéré, notre jeunesse sera capable de créer de lui-même les fondements matériels de son avenir. C'est pour dire que toute initiative qui voudra encourager ou accompagner le Burkina Faso, surtout la jeunesse de la diaspora, à s'investir sera la bienvenue. Je voudrais prendre un exemple d'une communauté en Italie ici, et que je crois fera partie des communautés les plus représentées. C'est le Burkina, à travers donc ce qu'on appelle les Bissa, d'une localité qu'on appelle le Boulgoum, où les impacts de la diaspora, en tout cas, se lisent à deux niveaux, négatifs comme positifs. Positif parce que en matière donc de développement de l'investissement familial, dans l'entrepreneuriat familial, c'est une localité qui est une référence pour le pays. L'investissement communautaire également est une référence parce que c'est une diaspora qui est très bien organisée et qui font de très bons investissements qui sont appréciés, mais qui du coup suscitent ou bien incite les jeunes des autres localités à aller à la recherche du meilleur, parce que justement les terres auxquelles ils ont affaire pour exploiter ne donnent pas suffisamment de la nourriture, suffisamment de l'eau et de l'énergie. Et du coup, c'est aussi pour dire que la dégradation des terres demeure le fondement, en tout cas, pour jeter l'essor donc de notre développement. Et c'est pourquoi nous réaffirmons notre adhésion à l'initiative 3S, mais également à l'initiative régionale, hier je l'ai déjà dit, qui est l'initiative de la Grande Muraille verte pour le Sahel, le Sahara, qui fait également aujourd'hui ses preuves à travers donc les différentes interventions, en tout cas au niveau de notre pays, qui amènent des jeunes à se fixer sur les terroirs, mais également à développer de nouvelles technologies, donc non seulement de restauration de terre, mais également de production. Et l'autre aspect négatif que je ne voudrais pas évoquer, mais qui est aussi nécessaire, c'est que lorsque ces jeunes partent, la plupart abandonnent des familles, surtout des femmes, qui sont dans l'attente permanente, 10 ans, peut-être 2 fois plus de 10 ans, qui attendent toujours son mari. Et pendant ce moment-là, qu'est-ce que cette femme devient? Et dans nos traditions, la femme est contrainte à la chasteté. Bon, et du coup, voilà un problème social qui se pose. Ça suppose qu'également, il doit falloir que nous travaillions à occuper suffisamment les femmes pour qu'elles pensent peu à certains besoins. Et en termes donc de recommandations, je voudrais dire que nous soutenons l'idée que nous devons simplifier les procédures administratives liées donc aux investissements de la diaspora dans nos pays. également, nous devons faire travailler à une garantie de la sécurité juridique pour l'investissement de la diaspora. L'incitation fiscale doit être aussi une implication forte que nous devons considérer. Mais le maintien du dialogue, de la consultation régulière pour la promotion de la transparence et de la responsabilité, en tout cas, doit se faire prévaloir. Encourager l'innovation technologique va également nous permettre de diversifier donc les sources d'attente de la jeunesse de nos communautés. Un exemple terre à terre, lorsqu'on fera la promotion de l'écotourisme, lorsque on développera des technologies de production peu contraignantes ou qui fatiguent peu, en tout cas, cela va susciter nos jeunes à rester dans leur terroir, mais également la diaspora à investir convenablement. Je vous remercie.
Collègue du Tchad.
Oui, ça vient du Tchad. Bonjour à tout le monde. Merci pour la parole accordée. Merci surtout d'être invité à cette assise d'importance capitale pour mon pays, le Tchad. Pour mon pays, la diaspora est effectivement incluse dans la politique nationale, puisqu'elle est là, présente même à l'Assemblée nationale, qui est maintenant Conseil national de transition. Aussi, au niveau des affaires étrangères, il existe une direction dédiée spécifiquement aux Tchadiens de l'étranger. Mais ce qui est déplorable, il n'existe pas d'organisation propre ou structurée relative aux investissements de la diaspora dans le cadre d'adaptation, résilience ou l'environnement de façon générale. À mon avis, au sortir de cette rencontre, j'aimerais bien que l'IFD accompagne le Tchad à mettre en place une stratégie pour travailler en amont avec la diaspora et en aval avec les bénéficiaires afin de sortir des projets ou initiatives plus résilientes au niveau communautaire, local et même national. Hier, si je me rappelle bien, Madame Becker avait dit que revitaliser les terres et sols est la meilleure manière d'aller plus loin et mieux. Vous êtes sans ignorer que le Tchad est un pays d'élevage par excellence. L'argent envoyé par la diaspora, certains investissent dans l'élevage pour l'achat des têtes de bœuf. Une seule personne au Tchad peut disposer de milliers de têtes de bœuf. Or, on sait tous que les animaux aussi détruisent l'environnement et souvent cela crée des conflits ouverts avec les agriculteurs et les éleveurs, aboutissant parfois à des morts d'hommes. Aussi, mon pays, le Tchad, est une zone tampon par excellence qui accueille bien évidemment les réfugiés venus du Soudan, Centrafrique, les Boko Haram et autres. D'où nous pensons que la gestion des terres, la gestion durable des terres doit être une préoccupation pour mon pays. Le Tchadien n'est pas un habitué. Le Tchadien n'a pas le goût de l'aventure pour aller à l'étranger, rester là-bas et autres. Mais ces derniers temps, la jeunesse commence à imiter leurs frères des pays voisins. Simplement parce que la terre ne donne plus, la productivité des terres n'y est pas. D'où nécessité de prendre à bras ouverts la question relative à la productivité des terres. Ce sont là les points que j'aimerais bien mettre à votre appréciation. Merci bien.
Yeah, thank you. Following up to my earlier question, maybe can we have a look at the activities under component 2?
Yeah, this is scheduled, but you know we wanted to give the floor, to our colleagues that are French speaking. Yeah.
Their submission, because we were talking about sustainable land management, and my colleague has also emphasized that sustainable land management is a very good option. Now, if we look at what we are proposing and component 2, I don't see anything related to sustainable land management, because in your earlier response you said these were just semantics which we could use. Now, if we have gone to sustainable land management, I think there is no intervention here that is responding to sustainable land management. Thank you.
Steve, I'll
Yes,
you elaborate on that.
Okay, yeah, thank you for the interventions. I am going to discuss in some more detail the second and third components. I'm reading from a synthesis of the broader paper, which is available both in English and Francais, a 4-page synthesis on the table. Thank you for the comments on sustainable land management. It's certainly a core mission of UNCCD, and we're proud to be in partnership with them. This proposal would indeed include a range of awareness raising, financial education, and capacity building on practical practices to improve both climate resilience, that is the ability to stay in production in the face of drought, shifting precipitation patterns, and sustainable land use, that whole constellation of practices that are so critical in your country and many of the countries of the region. This is not to suggest, of course, that climate change and sustainable land management are the same thing, but there is an intersection. There is, for example, with land restoration or regenerative practices, they both improve the fertility of the land, but also have an interesting climate component, making it more resilient to drought and shifting rainy seasons and so forth. So it's an absolutely critical core portion of this, and will be covered in the broader paper in more detail with that community-based interventions and so forth that we know, and again from the extensive experience of colleagues at UNCCD, have made real impact. And so just to assure you that this is not a minor or a footnote, it is a core portion of this, which may not come out, of course, in the climate or in PowerPoint. Another key portion of the second component on innovations to leverage remittances for resilience and sustainable land use would be the provision of practical weather information or information of a practical nature for remittance families and communities, including even some actionable data from the climate community. Usable practical data on how climate is changing, what might be the rational, practical responses for people, whether they're in pastoral pursuits or they're agriculturalists or in other enterprises, agricultural extension services and other expertise that people can use and apply in a way that not only improves food and water security, but hopefully is a more productive way of enhancing their businesses, which we're talking family enterprises by any other name. Local outreach, of course, to family farms and to grazing enterprises and other rural enterprises with training and demonstration by people from the sector who have demonstrated their ability to inform better methodologies, better practices, with an emphasis in different contexts, of course, on youth, on rural youth, because everybody recognizes that this is a key group. This is the future. How can they belong and make a more productive contribution? And again, we know that we are proceeding in the face of complexity and uncertainty, but that's in a way how we're going to move here. And this is a frontier area, so the first thing we need to do is generate information, knowledge, and learning, and disseminate that to everyone. And to all of the other commentary, all of which are incredibly timely, in terms of outreach and continual consultation with everybody at the country and sub-regional level, that is a very fundamental part of this proposal. It's essential because everybody's contexts and situations are somewhat different. This is not a one-size-fits-all by any stretch of the imagination. Another part of this for the agricultural side could be the creation of demonstration farms to test new methods that are both resilient and more productive in the face of shifting rainy seasons and drought, that would also train trainers, that could be centers of learning for farmers in a particular region. This, again, is not a new idea. It's been tried in other attempts to spread knowledge. And also a key part is, and a challenging part, admittedly, is to improve access to a range of financial products from local financial service providers. Now, I would add that the Remittances and Diaspora Group at EFAD have a lot of experience working with the financial sector because remittances, of course, are monetary family transfers. And I think, I believe, that experience can be leveraged as we move into working with financial service providers and to help them to recognize that this is, in fact, a market for them. And so I'm not going to sit here and say this is going to be an easy or facile exercise, but we're talking about the growing demand for a range of financial services and products, and also other products, tools, water efficient, solar panels, whatever the case might be. So that's about generating also local enterprise opportunities as well, and for youth and entrepreneurship. And again, working with local financial service providers, very contextual, very much a local prospect. That's why we need to learn a bit in each country that participates, each sub-region. And as I mentioned, working even with local enterprises that provide, products, technologies, services that help, that offer solutions or at least actionable advice to people trying to build a more resilient future. And then an entrepreneurial side of this, technical assistance, mentoring, some of which could come from members of the diaspora who themselves are, in most cases, diaspora investors who are gifted entrepreneurs who understand the development challenges of their country, their home, their country of origin, probably better than any other investor. Would they be willing to mentor small, micro and small enterprises and startups with young entrepreneurs who are looking for practical solutions to make people's lives better? That's sort of a quick run through of the second component. Now, the third component looks at, I'm sorry, please.
Thank you for the opportunity. The second component, yes. I didn't see it here, but you mentioned that you're going to set up some sort of demonstration site or some learning site. I know IFAD has worked over the years. You've tried various interventions, and they have worked. Even since before I even joined my institution, IFAD has been in the system, so you can imagine. So these learning sites are already tested, don't you think we should just replicate them instead of?
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing it up. Absolutely. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. Almost everything we're proposing has been done by EFAD and others in several localities and contexts. Why reinvent if we can add on a new focus? It's more efficient, it makes sense. That the idea here is not de novo creation, it's adding to the next layer to help people in the real world.
Thank you. And then the last point here, the provision of tools and services. There's tools and services. I'm so enthused about that. Because the farmers, you might have the tools all right, but the maintenance is a key issue. And so if the thinking is that if there is a service provider somewhere, his job is to maintain those tools. Then the farmer contact him, get access to it for his farming activities. So I see this as a very brilliant intervention. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. It's sort of the supply and demand side, sort of 101, very simple, but this reflects the real need and the fact that in countries like yours and everyone else in this room, there are local providers at various levels. And what could EFAD do to facilitate that exchange in a practical way? So that's basically an overview of the second component. Oh, I'm sorry.
Very briefly, thank you. I think I liked very much the presentation and the number of initiatives that encompasses component second. I think it's very grounded and very based upon previous experiences. I just have a very quick and I think easy to answer question. Do you actually work also in host countries? I mean, can these activities in Europe, for instance, on the United States, do you work also in the host countries? Because since there was this discussion about who decides about the investments, all this awareness raising, all these possibilities, I think they entail also spending a lot of time and money in host countries, correct?
There's been a lot of waste in addressing this issue because it's either half done and it has to be complete. When addressing remittances and so on, everybody or many have strategies. We need to maximize on this. Says, well, that requires knowing the information from A to Z. That requires checking with the diaspora where they are. But we cannot invest in Europe. We cannot spend one dime in Europe. Next, problem not solved. The stories, individual stories like this, there's many. Many, of course, where remittances make sense. So yes, I would like to be just a bit brutal here in what is needed. With an example, many countries, and there's an SDG 10C about reduction of cost, meaning once we achieve that, we're happy, go home. We leave it. No, cost is just an indicator. But we do that, we reduce the cost, and we don't follow what remittances do after that. Many countries do this. Financial institutions, stop there. They're not involved. Let's take it to the next step. Let's now continuing with those that receive the remittances. What do they need for that? They use it for SDG, but they also need loans. Can remittances help them do that? Can they access a loan, a savings product that will then allow them to achieve their dreams? Or an insurance? Yes. So financial we've done that. We've tested. So we went beyond the cost, and we see that financial inclusion is extremely important. What is being said here is, let's not do the same mistake again and stop there. This is what countries actually are realizing. We need to go beyond that. Now is the credit, saving, and insurance for what purpose? And that's when we're seeing that there's a lot of climate action involved as well. Let's push it to that level. Let's follow really the journey. Let's have a plan that takes into account the journey starting with the remittances.
So we don't have the restriction of not spending in Europe.
The idea here is a plan that works. That's it. As a member state, do you need it? Do you buy it? Because we have a lot of, that's it. And if you buy it, please take into consideration X, Y, Z. This is, if you want it to work, if you want to make an impact on this and leverage this reality, this is what needs to be considered. This is, in a way, what we're producing. It's a toolkit, you might call it. Maybe that's the best term to put it, but it's an approach that takes all the relevant consideration into place in order for this to work, which is to maximize the gigantic contributions that migrants are making through remittances or diaspora to their priorities. So,
actually, mine was a yes or no question.
I was just re-emphasizing the yes.
Yeah.
You need to have that information.
Are you working already in these 77 projects? Because I think it's a tremendous opportunity to really share what we have learned with your projects, working directly with the hometown associations and the communities of the diaspora in Europe, correct?
No, it's okay. Yeah, no, I'm done.
And not only on that, I mean, we have all these fishes outside, and you're free to take some of those. It includes supporting the migrant, particularly on financial literacy. We talk a lot about digitalization. There's this thing called one-leg digitalization. As you can say, it's either digitalization on one side or the other. It starts here. And there's a trickle effect in terms of priorities as well. If you're using a lot of digital technology to send your remittances, they might be, at some point, your incentive to motivate your recipient to use that, because the app is cheaper, it's faster, and by the way, it's linked with also a financial institution that could put savings credit, etc. This is just on the transfer side. So imagine what could transpire on the use of it. And the same thing in questions related to climate, in priorities, investment opportunities. This is basically what transpires out of this guideline. I heard something.
Okay, I'll proceed now to the third component, which is titled currently Innovations to Leverage Diaspora Investment for Climate Resilience and Sustainable Land Use. Earlier commentary by Don Fernando that, trying to get the diaspora investors information on them may be a real challenge. In some places that probably is true, but based on our background, it appears that many diaspora investors have clubs, gatherings, they share a fair amount of information. Obviously, when you're an investor, information is a commodity, so you're not going to necessarily divulge that you're looking at, what's the delta between, degraded land and fertile land, and how do I monetize that? You may not get that information, but it is quite likely that as a group they may be willing to talk about strategies, about directions, and also this proposal would seek their recommendations, seek their advice on how to approach these markets, which they know better than most other investors, certainly. So the idea is really an outreach and identifying the diaspora and investor networks in the region that are relevant in each particular country and context, sharing the data that we've already at this point obtained from the first component with this group, which has now will be coming back to many of them from the first component with the data that we have collected, sharing with them. That has some value to them. Again, seeking their views on how to increase relevant rural investments to improve land use, sustainable land use, more resilient types of agriculture and rural enterprises, and measures that in their estimation realistically could improve youth employment, rural youth employment. And again, as gifted entrepreneurs, this is extremely valuable information and intelligence. Another rather ambitious, perhaps, proposal within this component is establishing a marketplace, we're calling it, essentially a place to highlight intelligence on rural investments and introduce diaspora investors and others in the investment community, including the impact investment community, to promising opportunities, investment opportunities in participating countries and sub-regions, working, of course, in close consultation with any pre-existing investment promotion operations with public authorities, always, and essentially to provide information, to shed light on emerging opportunities, and always seeking advice, recommendations, and always, of course, in consultation with public authorities and other stakeholders that are relevant. We think there's a potential real value added there as well. And of course, as part of this, there would be an identification of relevant initiatives within EFAD and other development agencies, civil society, NGOs, foundations, national programs, impact investment, and so forth that could offer potential partnership or synergies with diaspora investments to enhance sustainable land practice, for land restoration, and of course for a suite of investments in more resilient agriculture and rural enterprises. That's the third component on diaspora invest. Should I stop for questions or?
That's already also the fourth, because the activities of what you just mentioned was the fourth, because we was not the strategy.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I come back to that in the fourth, but, yeah, okay.
You already touched upon
Okay, good.
Yeah. The
You can't emphasize
third
that.
component is very clear, but to me it's a bit ambitious. A bit ambitious from the point that we did our LDN target setting by 2019. Most of these countries, their target setting was up. And land degradation neutrality target setting exercise. By 2019, over 100 of countries set their targets. And it is meant to implement projects that will restore degraded lands by the year 2030. This time we are in 24, 6 years to come left to hit 2030. And we want to restore these degraded lands. And now, if you look at what the UNCCD has done, an LDN fund has been established, and we got Mirova to be in support of it. Mirova took over and started investing in some countries, including Ghana. But for Ghana, they are not investing in the degraded areas that we have identified. They are rather in the cocoa growing area because they want to make some returns. Now, I see this to be highly ambitious because we are now going to engage those in the diaspora. We are going to mentor the youth entrepreneurs for startups and all that. I mean, all this, very, very excellent. But how long is it going to take us to establish this component 3? Because I don't see much time at our disposal. Because as we started this long ago, we are still sort of trying to negotiate. So I want to find out how long this component 3, is it going to be the next 3 months, the next 1 year? Because we are targeting 2030. How long is this component 3 going to take? Thank you.
Well, obviously I can't answer that question specifically, yet it's ambitious, and maybe I should ask you sometimes when people say that's very ambitious, it's a diplomatic way of saying it's very unrealistic. And actually, no, seriously, these are the kind of questions we want to get to with the countries because it's important to know. It is ambitious. You're right, sir. There's no question about that. I recall somebody once saying, if you aim low, don't miss. So we're aiming high, and I hope we don't miss. But I guess why not be ambitious? I mean, the people in your country deserves it.
May I say, I don't know if if we should say that trying to support or maximize, not create, maximize what's already happened is ambitious, because to be honest, what we're doing literally is letting it happen, live its normal life with all the barriers, and not supporting it. I don't know if that's ambitious. Maybe the targets that we set ourselves might be ambitious, and that's different. And let's not blame now the diaspora. You need to do faster because we set our targets and so on. They're fine. They're not there. They were able to maintain their interest to the community, maybe to this issue, because let's not forget, those that are investing left. The remittances recipients, the families are there. They have a renewed interest to maintain, but their timeline is different. It's not a 2020, 2030. They couldn't care less. They don't even know what the 2030 dilemma is for them. They know is what the problem is tomorrow and what their families are facing. They took a decision. They migrate. They have the social fracture, the family fracture. So I think here is the question is, should we let this pass by again, or continue it to pass by and not maximizing it? That's it. There's no answer really to this question. We can get into how long it takes to component 3, that we can answer. The time of the study, we can say, setting up a fund. I can give you the entire ABC list, and this is what I think that this proposal would do, to see if this matches with priorities at national level. Absolutely, that we can do. It is ambitious, it is realistic. Now, less ambitious than what it is in here is what we know is normally what doesn't work. It is just half done and therefore doesn't work. From our experience, what is in there is what works, and what is needed in order for it to work. And we can be precise. We have this in the proposal. I finish with this. The idea is that the country receives this and says, I would like to apply it to my country. What would it take? What would be the time? And this is why the guidelines try also to support, in terms of timing, the timeline that would be required for it.
Just to add,
I wasn't in my microphone.
just a
Sorry about that.
Sorry, just a quick point. I agree with you, Pedro. It will be very context specific. For some country, like it was mentioned, the green wall was mentioned. They are already building sort of platform. To will be the same that this investment marketplace. To do the matchmaking. Between investor and potential donor, private or public. For Ghana, I mentioned yesterday this e-Griffin project. It will start in the coming months. It will be also a good opportunity. So for some country, we have to build everything. For some country, it will be very not easy, but it will take less time, to be implemented.
Thank you. Looking at this component, I think it speaks well with our national diaspora policy. And like Kara said, I think what we need to do now is look at those national priorities and see what are the existing priorities and what is not working and how can it work. Because if you look at the other part, which is talking at it, promoting trade and investment for the people in the diaspora policy, it is well articulated in the diaspora. It is well articulated in our diaspora and in our policy, and it has provided even incentives on how they can invest in the country. Also, we're talking about establishing a comprehensive online information portal for the diaspora and the database, so that we can inform them of the existing procedures, empowerment programs, viable investment, trade opportunities, and so on. So these are national priorities. So now, like it was said, let us see what can work now and how do we actualize that. Thank you.
To create that database, it cost money. There was a decision to make it because we thought it's worth it. Otherwise, I think the money could have been spent somewhere else. But it was worth it. The crime would be, we just put it there and we magically hope that the diaspora with that information will just do the trick. reducing the cost of remittances, many countries, all countries came up says the solution is just to put a website. We put a website, comparative prices, and we hope that the migrant will go and check that website that many of those proposed never looked at. They're going to look at and they're going to make a nice customer benchmarking exactly and decide on which, without taking into consideration that you use either Western Union or MoneyGram or your friend because of other concerns such as trust, etc., etc. Meaning the problem was half addressed. So looking if there exist priorities in this, absolutely, and it needs to match as well what we said about the diaspora. Again, it is to do the job right, but we have priorities on digitalization. We didn't talk about that. There is many national priorities on digitalization. Remittances can spearhead it. Where do we find those? In financial inclusion strategies. Remittances is not even mentioned. It's just a missed opportunity. That's the whole point. And here at IFAD, we're really trying to make the point is on climate, there is a missed opportunity. Should we let it pass or not? And if the decision is no, this is sort of a plan that could leverage into it. That could be the start of it. This is, in a nutshell, if I can summarize. Please.
Yeah. I think the question that I asked, I didn't get a response because I want to look at the timeline for the component 3. Is it going to be 1 year? Is it going to be 3 months, 6 months? I mean, how long?
You need to answer many of the Ghanaian questions right now. What we know or not of the diaspora.
Yeah, for Ghana, what I know, in fact, I just Googled and saw some information, a concept paper that has been developed, and there is a platform for the diaspora institutions. That's where I even felt there was a problem on our side, because the various institutions that were to be involved, like Ministry of Food and Agriculture, now we are talking about sustainable land management interventions. They are not in that team. The Environment Ministry is not in that team. But what I've said is...
And a long time, if you allow me to converse with you,
Yeah.
How long does it take in Ghana to get them to talk and agree? That's, for instance, a component. And these are some of the details, is how long it gets to get the right information, not just partial, the full information. These ministries in Ghana, because it might be different, to really converse. Are there any precedents that maybe with difficulty this or not? For instance, I'm just speculating. The case of Ghana requires is time on Ghana, I think. So precisely we cannot give you, I'm afraid, the real answer, but we can tell you the type of activities that are proposed, normally how long they take. Your ultimate question is 3 years. It might be. The studies, I can tell you, if I do the exercise in 30 seconds, we need to gather that information. You need to count at least 6 months from the moment that it is. With that information, you can have the right consultation to make sure that everybody that needs to be involved is there, particularly those that think that they shouldn't be involved and realize then that they should be because they're part of the equation. We need to identify also mechanisms already existing, and this is what it is suggested here, is not to reinvent more wheels than needed. Let's bet on the wheels that are already existing. So IFAD programs is one of the comparative advantages we're saying. We already have that. The entire infrastructure has been built. What we haven't done is just piggyback potential interests, clients in there. So if when you have all that identified, depending, as Maxime said, in certain cases, if you piggyback on a project, it's already made. What we need is just to get the diaspora now interested in investing in that. That also takes time. As Frédéric was mentioning, I think in an example, is you need to build trust. The diaspora is going to receive a call, an SMS, and says, hey, invest in Ghana. What? So I don't know the level of financial literacy that they will need in order to get to welcome to the investment center of Ghana. You know, so these are not easy questions. We know the process, and they might vary depending on the country, depending on the circumstances, but it works. So this is why your answer, your question is so difficult to answer precisely.
Well,
to see if it
for
the
Ghana,
matches.
in fact, the platform is already there. We're going to build it around what we use to develop the LDN target setting. That structure is already there. And so those institutions that I realized here, it's a matter of, incorporating them in that structure. That's all.
If we want to make a very short answer, it's I would say IFAD cycle, it's 5 years in general. For investment, here we are talking about innovation that are a bit more disruptive than for remittances. So we need to take time with the diaspora, with the stakeholders, so the public stakeholders, and also if we want to build this partnership with impact investors or other type of platform, we need time to build this innovation. So if you want a short answer, and sorry, Pedro, if this is not the right way of saying it, but I would say at least 5 years. Otherwise, we won't implement anything. We need at least 1 year to understand what we will do precisely, and the rest to implement. And to implement, there will be some iterations. If we want to implement something, it requires time, especially for investment.
No, I just wanted to thank the representative from Ghana. I think it's a very relevant question, and I think in our experience, I think when you talk about innovative finance, and for sure mobilizing diaspora funding for investments in climate resilience is innovative. And I think one key piece of that is short term, how do you really make it real in Ghana, show how it works, but from a country perspective, it's not a one-off thing. It's really looking at long term. And I think in each country, the pace may depend on the local context. I think in Ghana, for instance, you have a very interesting local ecosystem of impact investing. And I think some of those experiences layer on top of each other. And so you may have a number of organizations working in impact investing and education, which there are, and that ecosystem can be reinforced. And I think, in Ghana in particular, there's a really interesting environment where you can really take advantage of that experience and then look to how you can take that and engage the diaspora, perhaps in new investment opportunities in Ghana. And I think it's a very interesting thing. But I think the hardest, in our experience, part is short term, how do you make it real and show how it could work in the Ghanaian context, but also make sure that from a broader policy perspective, you're looking long term, because it's really about, you want the diaspora to be engaged not just once, but to really be much more engaged in a structured way. And I think you can do it. I think there's real concrete examples that IFA and others have. And I think, but each country, it's going to depend. And I think there's very interesting experiences related in each country in particular years.
Thanks, Zach. So we are heading to the end of the session. On se dirige vers la fin de nos travaux. Donc peut-être deux dernières interventions avant qu'on passe à la clôture. Louise, d'accord? Dernière intervention. Last intervention, colleagues. Please.
Hello everyone, Anna is a friend from France, so I'll switch to French. Je vous remercie pour l'organisation de cet événement. C'est une thématique importante, novatrice, dans laquelle le rôle et l'action du FIDA sont reconnus. Donc un petit point d'actualité, les discussions qu'on a eues en résonance particulière avec le Forum mondial sur la migration et le développement, que la France préside depuis le 1er juillet 2022 et dont le 14e sommet se tiendra dans quelques jours, du 23 au 25 janvier à Genève, autour d'une thématique principale, les impacts du changement climatique sur la mobilité humaine. Depuis sa création en 2007 à l'initiative de Kofi Annan, le forum rassemble des acteurs gouvernementaux et non gouvernementaux au niveau local, national, régional, dans une approche constructive et collaborative. En tant que forum intergouvernemental, il est aussi ouvert aux organisations internationales et aux acteurs de la société civile, du secteur privé et de la jeunesse. Parmi les nombreux sujets dont traitera le 14e sommet figure celui des diasporas comme actrices du développement économique, social et culturel des territoires. À ce titre sera notamment évoquée la question de savoir comment renforcer la contribution des diasporas à une action climatique durable. Donc ça entre parfaitement dans les discussions qu'on a eues. Dans un contexte d'accélération du changement climatique et de détérioration de l'environnement, il est en effet, selon nous, impératif d'établir des conditions propices qui permettent aux organisations de la diaspora de contribuer pleinement à l'adaptation et à la résilience au climat. Par ailleurs, un petit point sur les activités de l'Agence française de développement, car elle pilote notamment un projet qui s'appelle JazzDev sur les transferts, l'épargne et les investissements de la diaspora, conduit en partenariat avec les caisses des dépôts de France, Italie, Tunisie, Maroc et Sénégal. Le projet doit permettre une meilleure information des utilisateurs sur les services de transfert, d'épargne et d'investissement disponibles, un appui aux opérateurs privés émergents et l'implication des institutions financières publiques, et il a été lancé en 2021. Les débats tenus au cours de ces 2 journées ont vocation du coup à trouver toute leur place dans les réflexions que la présidence française du Forum mondial sur la migration et le développement aura l'honneur de conduire sur ce sujet. Donc je vous remercie beaucoup, c'était très enrichissant de discuter avec vous.
Mr. Lakinjan, thank you, France. Spain, you have a statement too?
Kind of a more institutional also declaration of love. Because when IFAD launched its financing facility for remittances over 15 years ago, I think now, Spain was among the first donors and partners, and we firmly believe that the substantial development impact of remittances and FFR is very well positioned really to really contribute to the joint effort to enhance the significance of remittances. So we salute the seminar. I've learned personally a lot. I think it's very exciting that you're moving into this new area of linking, on the one hand, the climate resilience and combining the impact on one of the root causes of migration with the opportunity of land restoration and sharing good practices, and connected that also to investment. I think I like very much the very down-to-earth and very flexible approach that you have, and I'm sure that our friends and partners in the receiving countries of this support understand that, as you said, one size doesn't fit all, and that I understand that the program will work very closely with the local authorities and governments, and to build upon the different platforms or initiatives. And then, of course, I agree, this is a long-term commitment, because it's not the type of activity where you can have measure an impact on leveraging in the short run. It's about changing mindsets. It's about favoring interactions between partners that don't spontaneously work together. And I think in that sense you are an honest broker between different partners, and some of the brokers are us actually, because I just wanted to reiterate that for us this is very dear as a Spanish administration, because we have three priorities that actually talk to each other. The first one being climate change, and what can we do in terms of adaptation and mitigation and taxonomies and promoting investments, and that is not greenwashing. As I said yesterday, our government is looking for these opportunities, because we already committed 1.3 billion euros per year in financing climate change. So all this discussion, it would be interesting to increasingly see how can you, perhaps through, I don't know if the Green Climate Fund, but if you could really measure, for instance, if we work with FAO, there is a percentage of our contributions that is measured in terms of our political objectives as climate finance. It's not 100%, and it depends on the type of activities. So I think to explore how far can we go in terms of framing this would be important. A second priority, and I'm already finishing, the second priority is, of course, food security and rural development. And as I said, we already have a portfolio of more than 300 million euros with IFAD, and we have like a long list of projects that are in the works. So anyway, I think particularly because oftentimes, and again, in these projects, we either work with national development banks or national authorities, but sometimes also with private sector, with big banks locally. So just very open to have your advice and to share perhaps profiles and see how can we, in as part of what you defined as described as mainstreaming, I think that would be very important. And the third priority, of course, is migration itself. No, I think I like very much that throughout this discussion, the important thing is not remittances. It's only a sign of, as I said yesterday, like a blood test of migration. Why do people leave the countries? How do they send the money? What can we do to really not use their money, but help them make the right decisions? And that's why I insisted a lot on working also, for instance, in my case, in Spain. No? We have very good examples of banking population, and nostalgic trade is another topic that you can explore. No? There are like 200,000 Equatorians in Murcia, and I'm sure if we convince Carrefour and others, they would be very willing to really buy, even with a premium, buy local produce. No? So migration is important. Spain has a lot of Spaniards migrated back in the 60s, so we've known, just like Portugal, both sides of the equation as a country exporting talent and people, and now receiving. And it's critical for us to find a way to, as I said, and that's my own final sentence, I love what you do because I think it's starting at a very difficult European moment. It's starting to shift the discussion from national security and how many people have drowned in the Mediterranean to diaspora as an agent of change. So thank you, congratulations for your work, and we are here. We would love to really explore ways to enhance this cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this, and I think leading now to the closure of this event, I would like to thank Spain, Luxembourg, the EC, because it's thanks to their support that IFAD gather the expertise that we now are trying to share. We need to close because we have some issues. The interpretation is stopping. But I want to thank them, because this is about to shut down. It's been extra work. Thank you so much for that. We got so into that we forgot our blogs on this, so we really want to thank you. We can see them, but thank you for they're there. Yeah, I thought it was the French was on that side. I will continue in English, so I hope that that's not a problem. Just one, on the next steps of this. This is definitely not a one-time thing. I would like to ask you to think about climate like in the 1990s, where some people are actually making jokes, and today the mindset has totally changed. It's part of our lives. This field of work is not there. It would be nice that it is integrated in the same normality as when we think now about climate. That's, I think, the analogy that I would like you to leave with. This is a reality that cannot just be omitted. It's how could we think in the 80s without climate and just whatever. You know, I remember seeing a commercial about a car saying the Kyoto Protocol say that the temperature will raise by 2. It's always a French commercial, but they're very good at it. And they were saying that no problem because the new Kia has integrated air conditioning de série. We were able to make jokes like this in the 90s, not today anymore. So what I'm trying to say by that, and you mentioned this, change of mindset is crucial here for many countries because, again, so many people and so much funds are involved. So again, thank you. Now, where we take it from there? Lunch, one. Second, Second is we would like to get all the feedback that we receive. It was very helpful because we want to have that first reaction. The challenge of this is not the guidelines, is that everybody feels that, yes, this resonates with our reality. We would like to improve this. This is the reason why you saw PowerPoints and not an entire document, because we want to get that information firsthand. So we will prepare this and re-engage with you. We might do this in a virtual manner. We prefer in person, but we would like to have your second feedback once we integrate this feedback. This is the next challenge that we have, and Maxime will add to it. Hein? Tu m'as compris, tu peux le dire. So with that, I would like is to give the floor to Louise for the real final words.
Real final words. I'm not sure that's quite a thing, but anyway. It's been really interesting. My takeaways: migration is a rational decision. Diaspora are rational investors, and we have to treat them like rational investors if we want to work with them. So it's all about rationality, and I think we shouldn't fool ourselves in other ways. I heard a lot about reducing the costs. I heard a lot about de-risking those investments for people. I heard a lot about the need for a pipeline of bankable projects. To keep this going, it isn't a gap and then we fund something in 5 years' time. We keep this pipeline moving. We had some actually really interesting experience, which I'll talk to you about, with co-designing projects in the Sahel region, actually on technology transfer, that might be an interesting model we can bring to the table. We heard a lot about about the regulation, the enabling environment, and the kind of the context in which these investments are going to take place. So the summary version: governments don't need to interfere, they need to make life easier, to make these investments possible, to give someone's laughing at me already, to give the diaspora a safe space to invest and encourage that investment. And I love the ambition of it. And so from my side, I think the next steps are great. We like to think ambitious. I think the steps here are really solid. They do cover everything that needs doing. No time pressure, but you are cordially invited for another follow-up, maybe in person, at our COP, at our Conference of the Parties in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia, at the end of the year in December. And we'd like to do something where we invite diaspora who are based in Saudi to have a conversation with us to try and see whether we can take this forward as well. So I think from our side, it's been hugely successful. This is keeping the ball moving in exactly the right direction, and we look forward to collaborating with you. And Ifad, thank you very much for hosting us. Catherine, I told you, never happens, last word. Go on.
Yeah, I was saying that from the discussions we're having in the corridors over the tea breaks, I know that there's still a lot that the governments have to contribute. But what we would like to make sure is that we just capture particularly the interests, so that we also know where to put our efforts. As we've continually said, it's a game that we can't do alone. We have to work with you. And I think IFAD have also made that clear. So we would like to really move with those countries where the interest is there. So Julian has done the youth, the brilliance of the youth. Some 2 questions on Mentimeter. If you could scan the code on your phone and just give your responses to those questions, so that we can just get a sense of which countries are interested and where the opportunities are, so that it also helps in our progress with IFAD and where to focus. Thank you.
I then declare the meeting closed. How about that?
Louise.
You've got to sign up your interest. It's not working.
Yeah, it is.
once everyone is logged in and has scanned the QR code, I'll just switch in and questions should appear now on your phones, and there's no limit of words. You can enter as much, and once everyone has given their first answer, I'll switch to the other one so you can. Did someone did not scan the QR code? And okay, yeah, I'll put it back. It's on your screen right in front of you.
Exactly, the menu for lunch.
Okay, I'll repeat them slowly. Okay. It does, yeah.
It's going to take you to a Mentimeter, then it's going to ask you some questions.
I know. It's like a survey.
Yeah.
Everyone is on it. Can you see the little instruction page? Okay. Now you should see questions appearing. Again. No, the questions are in English, but you just can type your answers down.
No, it's in French.
I'll give it to you.
Okay, young people, come help him. Exactly. Digital literacy, right? He spent the last 2 days going, your generation.
Yes or no?
This is the test to see how well you can work with young people. We're prioritizing them.
So it's only one question? Yes or no? Yeah?
Well, yeah, but no one, not everybody has answered yet.
Oh, you're too late now.
Yes.
Did it?
And you can
Very
give,
good.
and
12 responses.
There you go.
Somebody did not do the homework.
This is just in French, because my account is in French. You just write whatever you want.
Please wait. Veuillez attendre que le présentateur montre.
Okay. Second question, and it's really to give us an overview of who we need to follow up with.
Lunch is served outside, so please enjoy.